Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. Now, The Big Fight has been on the road this entire election season, but we've come back here into the studio to really focus attention on one particularly important issue that seems to have emerged increasingly as the election campaign has been building up. And I'm going to put this as a theory and a thesis to everybody. This election is increasingly becoming a referendum on leadership. And now, in the last week, that entire question of leadership has got one more twist after the book which has come out by Sanjay Baru and questions about the leadership style and functioning during UPA 1 and UPA 2. A referendum on leadership, I call it, because that's the way Narendra Modi in particular seems to be pitching it in a very presidential style. So, where does leadership fit into all of this, and is this an election that is a referendum on leadership? And if so, which way is that going to go? That's what we're going to be discussing on this episode of The Big Fight, and then I promise I'm going to get back on the road all the way through till counting day. Joining us on this, Mr. C.R. Kesavan, National Spokesperson of the Congress Party, joining us from Chennai. Thanks a lot for being with us. Devang Nanavati joining us from Ahmedabad, who's been a really close associate of Mr. Modi and has been watching his leadership style in some great detail over the last few years. So we're going to get you, Devang, to decode for us what sort of a leader Narendra Modi as Prime Minister would be if in fact he does become Prime Minister. With us here in the studio, Prashant Bhushan. Again, with the Aam Aadmi Party, we've had Mr. Arvind Kejriwal with a very specific and a very clear-cut leadership style. And we're going to ask you about that and whether that is the way that he would continue to play going forward. Gardner Harris, South Asia correspondent of the New York Times, and we're going to get what the rest of the world thinks about the various leadership styles that leaders have. And actually, this time I think in India, it's particularly the differences between one leadership style and the other has been particularly acute. We'll get you to talk about that. Professor Aditya Mukherjee is a historian, will put this all into some sort of historical perspective of all leaders that we've had in India and which way we could go. And Sunil Alag, who's a independent marketing consultant, but been a particularly great fan of the Modi brand of leadership. So we will get you in to come and talk about that, and with that disclosure that you are particularly enamored of the Modi brand of leadership. But before I go to anybody else, Mr. Kesavan, why don't I start off with you? We've just had a book coming out, which I know the Congress Party doesn't think much of, but in a sense it does have a fairly sharp indictment of the style of leadership we've seen, because what that points to in UPA 1 and particularly in UPA 2 is responsibility without authority and authority without responsibility, and that always is a very bad way to do leadership. That's one theory. Others will say that no, that's fine because that's how you get consensus.
The kind of sheer political opportunism smacks of such devious intent when the timing of the book of the release. I think it's better not to dignify this, because I think the Prime Minister's daughter has very categorically and unequivocally answered it, and I think that rests there, because if this man had any inkling of such hesitation, he should have released the book right after 2009 or raised issues if they're really existent issues. So this is a vivid imagination of a person who is completely disenchanted and disillusioned, and I think you should leave it there. The fundamental difference between the leadership styles is really manifest, it really is proven by what happened with the manifesto. With respect to the Congress Party, 30 consultations were held by Shri Rahul Gandhi and 1.3 lakh people gave inputs over a period of 6 months, and the manifesto came out. But when you see the BJP manifesto, really it's going to go down infamy in history as a dubious distinction of the only manifesto released after the people started voting. This very clearly shows that the BJP has become a personality-centric party and a policy-centric rather than a policy-centric party, and I think it's probably because of the internal divisions, which is because of the leadership which is being fostered of Mr. Narendra Modi ji. Mr. Murali Manohar Joshi headed the campaign committee, and you see the kind of sharp indictment he gave 3 days back. Probably because he was moved away from his original seat of Varanasi, which Mr. Modi ji has taken. He said the Gujarat model had failed, and he said this is not about Mr. Modi ji, it's about BJP.
We are jumping from one subject.
Internal BJP.
We are jumping from one subject to the other. I'm going to come to Mr. Modi and his leadership.
I'm talking about the leadership, which is
fine. Can I just ask you a specific question, and then we'll move to Mr. Modi's leadership style, and we'll spend some time on that. First, what we've seen in the Congress Party. Set the book aside. I think a lot of people will feel that there has been a leadership vacuum in the last 4 or 5 years, which is why when Narendra Modi makes this a thing about decisive, firm leadership, it seems to be resonating with people. Whether there's a book or whether there's not a book, there has been a perception for the last 3 or 4 years that there has been no clear leadership. And now the book is pointing to the fact, which again many people have also guessed, that is there 2 power centers or 3 power centers. It's not just because of the book. This is something that many people have been feeling for a while.
It's a figment of imagination, because the UPA 1 and UPA 2 worked very well, and we are running on a record of giving rights-based legislation to the people, and as I told you, I don't see any divide. Nobody sees any divide. And now when you see the leadership, there is a Congress president and there is a Congress vice president, and even 2004 we never projected a prime minister, and in 2009 there was an incumbent, and we are going back again to the 2004 model, where we are going and running on policies and not on personality cult, which is which is what the BJP has done, and which is they're going to really follow victim to the strategy they've done, because there is so much of internal division because of this person. Let me just quote one point. It's not the Congress party's view. You see what NDTV did an exclusive with Maulana Kalbeji. Why did he say that he accepts Shri Rajnath Singh ji as Vajpayee ji, but he has fear about Narendra Modi ji?
We'll come back to Narendra Modi.
The problem with them is they are not running on any policy. They're running on a leadership on Narendra Modi ji, and he is a divisive, polarizing figure, and he's, across the spectrum, there is a trust deficit, there is a problem of credibility when it comes to Narendra Modi ji.
Okay.
And that is the leadership issue.
Devang Nanavati, I'm going to get you to talk about the leadership of Narendra Modi, but before that, is it entirely a figment of my or anybody else's imagination that there has been a leadership vacuum?
You see, the timing of the book probably more has to do with the publishers wanting to have more selling points at releasing it at this time. I don't think it has anything to do with a political conspiracy as the Congress party makes it. I think first of all, the book only proves what was already known to all of us. This has merely made it possible for the document to be exhibited. What this country badly needs and what people need are leaders who will take a decision, whether we may agree, not agree, whether we will criticize it, we will accolade it, that's a different matter. But the point is that here was a thing that you didn't just go out to bat. You have to go out and bat. You may fail, you may not score the runs, but you have to go and take the field. Here the Prime Minister was not allowed to take the field, and that was the problem. And the person who did not allow to take the field, as you rightly put it, had authority without responsibility. So you took decisions for which they are even today not claiming responsibility, be it many of the scams, be it the policy disasters, be it the foreign policy goof-ups, right from Sharman Sheikh onwards, and that's why today you are seeing one of the reasons that the mood of the nation is that people want strong and decisive leadership.
Okay, strong and decisive is fine, but I think the point that Mr. Kesavan was also referring to, there is a perception, right or wrong, that to take your example of coming out to bat and being a firm bat is one thing, but there's a certain concern that Mr. Modi might prove to be authoritarian. Some people are scared. I mean, he in his recent interview spoke about the fact, I won't be vindictive, but there are people who are concerned about that. That he's going to come out and bat and use the bat to hit the other team with it.
Vikram,
whack the umpire with the bat, stuff like that.
If I am not mistaken, you are the CEO of NDTV. If there is a CEO of a country as the Prime Minister or of any organization or corporation, during tough times, does he not have to exercise his authority and take decisive decisions? Does it necessarily mean dictatorial? No. If he takes those decisions within the system, if he exerts his authority within the constitutional framework that arise, then that is the leadership that the country is desperately needing right now. India is at the crossroads of this beginning of the 21st century, and we need authoritarian, strong, decisive leadership within the constitutional framework.
You need authoritarian leadership. That's what you're saying.
Vikram, can I?
Yeah, Mr. Kesavan, come in, then I want to come to somebody else. He said we need authoritarian.
No, but within the constitutional framework, assertive leadership.
Authoritarian, assertive leadership within the constitution. Mr. Kesavan, the exact opposite of what the Congress has been doing.
It is not a Freudian slip. I am saying authoritarian leadership within the constitution. You have to exercise your authority. It is the lack of exercising of that authority that has led to this problem.
The problem with the batting analogy is that right from the opening batsman to the last man,
you don't need to comment on my analogy, my dear fellow.
You can see the kind of problem they have. I'll just give you two examples. You remember the April 16th tweet of Rajnath Singh ji, the president. He said, "Is bar BJP Sarkar." In 33 minutes, he was forced to make it "Is bar Modi Sarkar." Even the president doesn't have his freedom. Definitely, it's an authoritarian leadership because the president of the BJP can't even tweet. And then they have this slogan called "Har Har Modi."
In one case,
and then which is
so
very
you're saying in one case the prime ministerial candidate is not allowing the BJP president to do it.
Slogan.
Okay. So in one case, the BJP president is not have freedom. In the other case, the Prime Minister perhaps may not have
Vikram,
freedom.
I just want to leave you with this thought on my opening remarks, that this country has seen the de facto Prime Ministerial candidate of the Congress party, Shri Rahul Gandhi, give a so-called famous interview to another TV channel, your competitor TV channel. And we've seen a couple of TV interviews in the past week of Shri Narendra Modi. Now, you may disagree or people may disagree with the content of the interview, but after seeing that interview, whom do you want as your Prime Minister when your country is at the crossroads? That's a question that the nation asks itself today.
That's not the only way to look at it. I've seen Arvind Kejriwal giving about 50 interviews, which are all things. Others have given interviews too, so that's not the only criteria. All right, Mr. Kesavan, your quick right to reply, then I'm coming to the studio audience.
President of the BJP doesn't have the freedom. That's because Mr. Modi ji is a Hobson's choice for BJP, but he's not a Hobson's choice for the country. Let me just ask one question to Nanavati ji. He talks about decisive. Has Narendra Modi ji even made one statement in the last 7 months about Muzaffarnagar? Is there any recorded statement on Muzaffarnagar? Shri Manmohan Singh ji, Srimati Sonia Gandhi and Shri Rahul Gandhi visited Muzaffarnagar, and Shri Rahul Gandhi went back and visited the relief camps. All that you could hear is this closest aide Amit Shah's provoking and inciting comments in Muzaffarnagar. Please tell me on this program on record, did Narendra Modi ji even make one statement on Muzaffarnagar when he's contesting in UP, and which is a symbolic fight from Varanasi?
I'm going to pause the BJP Congress fight just for a minute, and I'm going to come to now all of you. And Prashant, let me start by coming to you. We are, in a sense, from what we are hearing, there are almost two different models of leadership, and Arvind Kejriwal seems to have a slightly different style, although if the opinion polls are to be believed, he is not right now in any position to become the Prime Minister, not if the opinion polls are to be believed. Two different styles of leadership. One, let's have a consensus, let's not have one very clear person being mentioned. Other, very clear, one person, he is the boss, decisive, assertive, perhaps authoritarian. Which is better?
Leadership has to be judged by its moral quality ultimately. Firm and decisive is certainly a good attribute for a leader, but just being muscular, being authoritarian is not a sign of being firm and decisive. You have to exude and show moral leadership. Moral leadership means the ability to lead towards justice, the ability to be able to take others along, especially the disadvantaged sections of society. It's not merely this aura that Mr. Modi exudes of being very strong, muscular, authoritarian, that he is going to crush Pakistan, he is going to crush China, he is going to crush the Muslims, etc. This is the kind of authoritarian or decisive leadership that he exudes. That's what you see from his persona. That's not what this country needs. This is a country of great diversity. This is a country of 80% people living under $2 a day. This is a country of people of all kinds of religions, etc. A true leader in this kind of country has to have the ability to firstly take all sections of society along with him. Second sign of a true leader is to be able to have compassion for particularly the disadvantaged sections, for the minorities, etc. Mr. Modi unfortunately does not exude any of that. On the other hand, you have Rahul Gandhi, who unfortunately he has been thrust upon the Congress party through this dynastic model, and he is expected to take over the reins of leadership just because he happens to be from that dynasty. Unfortunately, that poor boy does not understand this country well enough to be able to really give us the kind of leadership that this country needs.
After those rather cruel opening remarks towards both of them, let me see, that's the big concern about a Narendra Modi Prime Ministership, that will he take everybody around, and or will there be large sections of people who will be left out? The Muslims, for example, others will be left out.
You know, I completely disagree with what has been said so far, because
including Devang.
No, Devang is fine, whatever he's saying, but I'm saying that, look, every crisis in the world throws up a leader. Okay, if you take Margaret Thatcher, if you take Winston Churchill, they were all very decisive, very strong. There was a crisis in the country which throws up a type of leader.
Depression.
Thanks to UPA, we have got a crisis in our country. In that situation, the best leader that has been thrown up, according to me, is Modi, because you do need a decisive, you do need a strong leader. He raised a question on manifestos. I think Keshavan from there. One second. All the difference is that, as far as I'm concerned, why was the BJP manifesto delayed? Because Modi didn't want to put anything in the manifesto which he couldn't achieve. There's a difference between the manifestos of other parties where they want to do something. Modi's manifesto is, I will do this. Now you are going to evaluate him on that basis, and that's the leader that you need today. And this big hoo-ha about carrying everybody, I mean, there's been no riots in Gujarat for the last 10 years. Are you telling me he's carried nobody in Gujarat? I mean, he's got voted every time because he's not carrying the downtrodden, that he's not carrying the minorities, and only the Hindus are voting for him. Come on, let's give each other a break.
Theoretically, that is possible.
No, no, it's not possible because he's won in areas. He's won in areas where there are
past the post system, you can win elections without taking everyone with you.
25% of Muslims have voted for him in Gujarat, according to the figures of the election commission. Mr. Kejriwal is concerned. That style of leadership is fantastic for a movement, because that leadership is always saying that I'm against this, I'm against this. What you need credibility is on what are you for. Kejriwal never says what he's for. He's against, but he's not for anything.
Professor Mukherjee, before I come to Gardner, do you agree?
And Vikram, only one thing, Mr. Modi comes from that very background of the downtrodden people that Mr. Bhushan was speaking about. He is actually one person who has risen without any privilege, so he knows what the underprivileged want and how to uplift them. Here is the story of a man who grows up from a backward class community, from a very poor and humble background.
You said one sentence, Devang.
Becoming the Prime Minister of India.
Devang, you said one sentence, which is why against my better judgment I yielded the floor.
Travels in now private jets and helicopters, who has now reached this exclusive club at the top.
Yeah, I know. Can I bang the gavel out here and be the judge and come back to Professor Mukherjee, whom I was trying to get to? Election 2014 has become a referendum on leadership, and that is perhaps exactly the way that Narendra Modi has designed it, and if so, it may well be a smart move to have made.
Yeah, I agree with you on the latter part, that undoubtedly the BJP and Narendra Modi made it so, that they've made it into a referendum for Modi's leadership. And the leader is defined, as everybody said just now, as somebody who's strong, who can majboot, who can take decisions. And as somebody said, Devang said, irrespective of what the decision is. As a historian, I scorn to think. Or the idea that was just now said by Sunil, that every crisis throws up a leader. So that's a good thing. The crisis in Germany in the 30s threw up Hitler. And so did it throw up Mussolini. Just a minute.
So did Margaret Thatcher. So was Winston Churchill. Let's give all the examples.
That's BJP is trying to project Modi as the leader, decisive leader who will messianic, who will solve all problems. And they've put ideology apparently in the back burner. In fact, even their manifesto comes so late when the election starts. So ideology is not the issue. But it is not as if it is so. What is happening is that Modi is sitting on a very definite ideology. One of it, part of his sort of hack job is done by Amit Shah, where you actually raise a communal polarized situation, and the other part is done by the corporates and by the media in a very big way. That is, I mean, there is a call seems to be.
The media was working against Modi. No, now it's working for Modi.
In fact, I was just talking to the New York Times correspondent that the only media which is now coming up with the kind of criticism that Modi requires is coming from Guardian and New York Times and elsewhere. All our media seems to now think that, he's a moderate, he can be changed, the economy matters, growth is the issue, as if, as if the fact that the Godra,
I'm always amazed at whom the media is paraded.
That this election,
the maximum critics
that Modi emerged
people who don't live in India,
by
who don't know
a
the
riot
reality.
and by parading people on the streets, dead people on the streets.
Which of the two models of leadership do you think is better? What the Congress did or what Modi is going to do?
No, what I'm saying is therefore that in this situation, the underpinning of the BJP ideology, where the corporates have now teamed up with the majoritarian thinkers for the first time in Indian history, the Indian corporates never all got together and supported a communal force.
There's a reason for it?
Of course, the reason is that, as you said yourself, the reason is the vacuum. Now, just because there is a vacuum,
so a vacuum
should one pick up a leader? And one more thing, this whole big noise about Modi becoming the sort of the referendum on Modi, thing is, it is a referendum in some parts of the country, in this huge country, in large parts, which we can discuss. That is not the issue. People are not discussing Modi. And secondly,
Where are
there
they
are
not
Where are they
discussing
not
Modi?
discussing Modi?
well, it is not the decisive thing in Tamil Nadu. It is not the decisive thing in Bengal. It is not the decisive thing in
So
Kerala.
there's a leader there.
You know,
Please,
it is.
there's a
it is
leader
not-
there.
No, no,
Please,
of course,
who's authoritarian, more
and
authoritarian than
the
Modi.
last point that I want to make
Mamta
on
and
this
Jayalalitha
is
more
there is a
authoritarian
large
than
number of
Modi.
people.
That's four states.
One more point
Okay.
on this, that apart from the regions where Modi is not there are a large number of people who we say now who are below the media line.
Okay,
You know,
fine.
in the sense those who are poor, they may be thinking something else, and
All right.
we are
But
probably
it's
getting
still-
carried away by
Okay,
what the
fine.
media hype is.
You know, I always get hesitant when everything is blamed on the media, but
No,
that's
not blame,
that's
not
what-
blame.
That's the way
This is not a
life
blame.
Can I ask you, Gardner, essential thesis of a referendum on leadership, is that the way it's being seen abroad as well? And if so, which of these two styles of leadership do you think is, how do you rate the styles of leadership? Because now we very clearly got one style of leadership that is being espoused by Narendra Modi, and a different style of leadership, which is the way the UPA has functioned.
I mean, I think foreign governments are always interested in having a clear leader in a country. I mean, I think
Although it could lead to a Vladimir Putin, which is,
it could lead
then
to
they
all
get- then they
kinds
get
of
a little
problems,
concerned.
but people sort of like to be able to get an answer, right? Whether it's a foreign government or a foreign business or something. And I think Sanjay Baru, in his most recent book, The Accidental Prime Minister, makes a very good case that this past government sort of degenerated in its leadership form in terms of having this two-headed government with Sonia and with Manmohan sort of together, and by the end not really communicating, whether it was because she was sick or wasn't around, or he sort of started losing his energy, unclear, but clearly decision-making slowed down and nearly came to a halt at the end. And I don't think anybody thinks that that's a good idea. Whether Narendra Modi offers the sort of the preferred solution to this leadership problem is, I think, of course, the great debate of this election season. I mean, I think...
And do you agree with the thesis that perhaps that the answer to that one question may well determine which way this election goes?
I think that there is...
And that's certainly the way it's being positioned.
Certainly, that is what the BJP hopes. They want this election on governance. It's very clearly part of their strategy. They talk about governance and they talk about leadership, and that's what they want this. And this book by Sanjay Baru, despite the fact that he is clearly a great defender of Manmohan Singh, plays definitely straight into that narrative. It's really interesting that this studio audience is very clearly deeply pro-Modi, which is, of course, is what's going on in the urban.
Yeah,
center.
I mean, having said that, this is urban, urban
Absolutely.
path middle class, so that's always a rider that you do have to give.
Yep.
It's not necessarily the way things will play themselves out in Bundelkhand, for example, but who knows. Mr. Kesavan, let me come back to you now, and then I'm going to come to Devang. You just heard what Gardner said, that at the end of the day, and again I'm coming back to let's set the book aside and the timing of the book. The fact that there was a leadership vacuum, that decision making came to an end, that nobody could get anything actually done for the last 3 to 4 years. Decision after decision, even if it was taken, was not actually implemented on the ground. Directives were coming, the bureaucracy was not acting upon it. There was a sense of complete paralysis, policy and otherwise, for a prolonged period of time. And that perhaps is one of the reasons why you are having such a great audience for someone who comes out and says, I will be decisive and I will take decisions.
Not at all, Vikram. See, it's a coalition government. You have to understand that, and coalition government has different partners, and you need to do balancing. And with all the, you moved 14 crore people out of poverty. You had the highest growth rate. The last 2 years have been a global slump, so we had a little slump here. So I think it's a fallacy to say there was a leadership vacuum.
Okay,
or a
Mr.
paralysis.
Kesavan, let me give you one example. Let me give you just one example.
Leadership. We run on a record, Vikram. They said it's a referendum about Mr. Narendra Modi ji. Very well and good. I think that's where the BJP has done a big mistake. I just want to give one example where after the March 19 meeting when Advani ji was announced as the
Can we just set the BJP aside for a minute?
Modi ji drove straight to Jandelwalan and met the RSS chief. He's reporting to the RSS chief as the prime ministerial candidate.
Let's set that.
The leadership is
Let's
going
talk
to be
about
good
your
leadership.
leadership.
Then the remote control is going to be the RSS. But let me
Let's
tell you
talk
one
about
thing.
your
It's
leadership.
a hypocrite by the BJP. It's a self-goal by the BJP by making it a referendum about Modi ji, and their politics of
Can I ask about
politics of
Mr. Kesavan, let me interrupt you in full flow. Let's talk about self-goals. Let's talk about self-goals. You mentioned self-goals. Let's talk about self-goals. Arguably one of the biggest self-goals India has scored in recent years, which absolutely destroyed investor sentiment, is when in a budget brought by Pranab Mukherjee, suddenly retrospective tax is put inside. It's a decision that was taken. Apparently, it's a decision the Prime Minister doesn't even know about till a day before. then did Sonia Gandhi know about it? Nobody knows. So here you're having a situation where decisions are getting taken and nobody knows who's taking the decision. How is that a good way to run a government?
Picking out on one point, the responsibility solely and directly lies with the Prime Minister of India, and the Prime Minister of India is Shri Manmohan Singh, and that's where the matter stands and the buck stops there. As simple as that. And I think this whole media creation or the purport to see any incumbent
government. Hang on. Let me take you on. So therefore 2G, Colgate, when all of those are done, when 2G is done and Colgate is done and the Prime Minister can't act, is that a good way to run the government?
That's very unfortunate.
What's unfortunate? When 2G happens and Colgate happens, is the Prime Minister in a position to say, you're my cabinet colleague, I will not allow you to proceed with this, and I can put my foot down and tell my party president,
he resigned.
I don't want a corrupt person, I'm going to have him out.
As soon as the matter surfaced, action was taken and the concerned minister was made to resign. Decisive
and
action
in
was
UPA
taken.
too, Mr. Raja comes back in and the Prime Minister can't get his way.
Please let's not forget that in the BJP has Mr. Purushottam Solanki, BJP has Babulal Bukharia and many other committed ministers in the cabinet. And please let us not forget Maya Kodnaniji, who was arrested and given a life sentence.
Babulal Bukharia has been acquitted by the Supreme
Please
Court.
let us not have selective amnesia when it comes to problem with Modi's leadership.
Modi is not defending
and just point fingers at the UPA.
Jail.
We all know what the Congress thinks the BJP has done wrong. We all know what the BJP thinks the Congress has done wrong. Can I just try and bring this down to styles of leadership, which is essentially what this is about? Why am I going on harping on this particular issue? It's because today the country is not very sure. If the UPA was to be sworn back inside, would we have another 4 or 5 years of uncertainty as to who is taking decisions and who the leader is? Because if that's what the alternative is, people would be concerned about that. Or are you saying, no, in the next 5 years, things will be different and there will be one person who will somebody will take a decision. Even if it's by coalition, once in a week we'll have a meeting and somebody will take decisions.
You look at the way things have been now. Now you had a Congress president, you had a Prime Minister who was not a Congress president. Now the collective leadership of the Congress president and the Vice President is what is leading the Congress party on, we are running on a record here. And I think after the elections, you definitely, Shri Manmohan Singh ji has said he is not going to, seek another term. So if the UPA is voted back to power for a third term and a hat-trick by the people of India, you will continue to have a decisive leadership, and Rahul Gandhi seems to be a natural leader for a party, and I don't think there will be any purported or alleged, problems as has been portrayed. I think it's all going to be fine, and you're going to have a decisive leadership as we had for the last 10 years.
Okay, fair enough. So that actually is slightly clearer. Devang, let me put that to you. He says, no, the same situation will not happen now, because now if Rahul Gandhi is the Prime Minister, he has far greater and closer access to the Congress President, and presumably they can discuss decision making over dinner or breakfast or both, and actually decision will get taken. Secondly, you heard from Professor Mukherjee and others a concern expressed as to what the Modi style of leadership could potentially mean. And is this something that is now being whipped up as being positive by corporates and by others? And that's what I think the Aam Aadmi Party has also been saying.
I don't agree to that. There are two examples to that. First of all, apart, enough has been talked about what has happened in Gujarat, but Sunil was right in pointing out that in Gujarat, all communities, all classes of the people have supported Mr. Modi and the BJP government. That is proof of the pudding as far as one example is concerned. The second is the corporates like it because it's a decisive government. The corporates want uniformity, want policy decisions to take place. That's another thing.
It's also said that the corporates like it because of crony capitalism. That's also said. Devang, it's also said corporates like it because of crony capitalism and the possibility for that.
Vikram, let me finish. Vikram, you can always have a flip side, okay? You can always have a flip side. What is crony capitalism to somebody is maybe the right economic theory for somebody else. Let's not get into that debate. I am putting you to the points as to why every class of Indian today, whether he may be the poor, the middle class, the rich, the corporate, etc., why they like Mr. Narendra Modi. A broad majority of them. Obviously, you will not have 100% people voting for one leader. That didn't even happen with Mahatma Gandhi, and that's certainly not going to happen with Narendra Modi. So let's not be naive on that. But today the majority mood of the nation wants Mr. Modi and the Bharatiya Janata Party because of two things. One, the positives that the leadership says, and two, because of the negatives of the earlier leadership or the lack of it, which we have seen in the past 10 years. Okay. Now, until this leadership comes, you will not know whether Mr. Mukherjee's fears will come right or not. As far as Mr. Mukherjee's fears are concerned, it is an old adage now. This is something, oh, Mr. Modi, that for anti-Muslim. BJP, therefore anti-Muslim, anti-minority. That's not there. Mr. Modi's theory is appeasement to none. justice for all. Okay, if you want appeasement for a particular class of people, that's not going to happen. If you want justice for all, equality for all, development for all, whether you are Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, etc.
We heard all of this in Mr. Modi's last rally also, so I'm going to pause you now.
No, let me come back to the main point. But that's the difference. That's the difference between Mr. Modi's leadership and Rahul Gandhi's leadership. That we don't say different things in rallies and our work doesn't act differently. They are the same. And our rallies do not bring truckloads of people who don't have any connection. They are genuine people attending. Look
Mr. Keteswan, reply, then I'm going to come back to the studio audience.
Vikram, can I just want to make one point.
Yes, Mr. Keteswan, quick point.
See, look at the statistics of the State Health Department, which talked about rural wages, rupees 11 and urban wages rupees 7 in Gujarat. They said 38 lakh families, that is, if you work it at 5 people for families, 1.9 crores are living under rupees 7 and 11 in rural and urban.
Mr. Keteswan, can we not get into Gujarat statistics? I can be here all evening.
1 out of 3 people is into poverty. No, you're trying to replicate the Gujarat model, Vikram. That's what they've been touting. So every 1 out of 3 people in Gujarat are in this poverty, poverty, and you want to do this is your record for the last 13 years. You do it for the
you want to replicate. Don't get into this fallacious argument.
Gentlemen,
100% of the problems are solved.
I'm going to leave you both. Can we go offline out here? And can I leave the two of them to discuss Gujarat just for 5 minutes? Let me come back to leadership.
Vikram, one last point on industrialists when you said crony capitalism, which I want to defend. 1 second. I want to say that, look, we are all against crony capitalism. In the last 10 years, yes, of course we are. Crony capitalism has taken place of crony politicians in the UPA. If you, nobody, not even the worst critic of Modi, can say he took even 1 rupee in his pocket for anything that happened in Gujarat. And that's why I'm against what you've just said, that, oh, crony capitalism is why we want Modi. No, because he's against it. Because he's going to allow industry to come in, he has a single window, he facilitates your coming in. That's why industry wants him. So don't make a statement on crony capitalism, please.
That's a statement actually that you've been making repeatedly. So why don't I allow you to answer what he said?
Well, it's said about Manmohan Singh also that he has not taken a single paisa in his pocket. That's a claim that I am still prepared to believe. But if Mr. Modi makes a similar claim, then the question that I would like to ask him is, why is it that he has, in the biggest scam that has unfolded in history in this country, that is the gas price scam, why is it that Mr. Modi has chosen this decisive leader, this absolutely definitive leader? Why is it that he has not said a word about whether he wants, just 1 minute. Why is it that he has not said a word about whether he wants 54,000 crores a year to be transferred from pockets of common people into the pockets of one company, Reliance? Because, and we found the answer later, that his own company, the Gujarat State Petroleum Corporation, asked for a price increase from $4 to $14, which meant that instead of 54,000 crores being transferred, 90,000 crores being transferred from the pockets of common people.
I just want to throw names for the catch of seeking votes of Ambani,
and he says that he is a decisive leader. Is this the sign?
What happened? Mr. Jaitley has already raised this in the parliament first.
What Mr. Jaitley?
You were the first one to say
Mr.
to
Jaitley
implement the correct gas pricing policy.
Mr. Jaitley defended
Ambani. Devang, we've heard you. Sunil is trying to add to what your point is.
He has said in the beginning, I accept that Manmohan Singh.
Don't defame our leaders so easily.
Okay, Devang, he's saying that Manmohan Singh is, I accept that he's an honest guy. Has he said anything against it? Has he said, Manmohan Singh is the Prime Minister of India. Has he said anything? Like, how do you accept it for Manmohan Singh but you question Modi? Come on, hang on. No, you just said Manmohan Singh is honest. Modi is not honest because he is not raised.
I am prepared to accept that. Though the decisions that is today itself I have raised two important scams which the BJP and Mr. Modi have remained silent upon. They remain silent whenever there is a scam involving the same crony capitalism.
Manmohan Singh remaining silent is okay.
Modi and the BJP
the Prime Minister remaining silent is okay with you. That's what you are saying. I like Manmohan Singh because he is silent. But I don't like Modi because he is not silent. Wow. Yes, this is brilliant. Lovely, Mr. A lovely response.
If this is the amount of shouting that happens in cabinet meetings,
And Vikram,
I'm not surprised the Prime Minister falls silent.
What kind
Can
of
I bang on
illogical
the...
statement is this? That the policy makers, the people who implement this gas pricing policy are not to be blamed.
Okay,
but the opposition leader is to be blamed.
Okay, can I bang on the gavel out here?
Party,
Order.
This is a point. No, but Mr. Modi must raise the point.
Devang,
Are Mr. Modi and Mr. Jaitley not representing the BJP?
Why are they being so
in fact, Mr.
defensive, Vikram?
Jaitley is the leader of the opposition in the House, and he has rightly raised it in the House, where it should be raised, not on the streets. It should be raised in the House, where something can be done about it. That's the problem of the Aam Aadmi Party, that they raise the problem, but they don't know the forum way to approach to solve that problem.
We've heard you.
That's why we don't need leaders like them. We need leaders like who know which the forums are.
I blame you for this. I blame you for this. It's entirely your fault, Prashant. It's entirely... Okay, now can I please, before I take a break and come back to the audience, can I please come back to leadership just for 2 minutes? At the end of the day, now I want to try and understand one other thing from you. This entire question of decisive leader, firm leader, and there's no clear leadership. Is this something that only plays itself out in urban centers, in audiences like this, in studios like this, or is this something that will be resonating with voters in Tamil Nadu and in Jharkhand and in Chhattisgarh and in Rajasthan? Do you think this is a big issue, leadership?
It generally is in a situation, as you said, where there is a vacuum, where there is a view of a crisis or a view of a policy paralysis. Generally, people would go for a very decisive leader. But unfortunately, that can be sometimes quite wrong. The decisive leadership is not the issue. Historically speaking, we've had
so they're saying they could go for it, but you're saying it's not necessarily the right decision
they
will take.
Decisive leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru was a very decisive leader. But then
on occasion
comes with a whole bunch of ideology, where he stands, and it's very well known that Nehru, when he would give a speech and if there was no opposition, he would write an article the next day in a pseudonym criticizing himself. He says, what is a democracy without criticism?
Okay,
so that's one kind of leadership.
Right.
Decisive,
can I ask you,
but open.
I think one of the
That's because he wanted...
Okay, Devang, please let someone else talk down.
I think one of the reasons why leadership has come up is that there's a growing sense in India that India is falling behind, that China, with these very autocratic rulers, has really outstripped India in a substantial way, and it has. If you go to Beijing, if you go to Shanghai, those cities are extraordinary, and India really doesn't have cities like that. It has fallen far, far behind China. So I think that there is a sense that...
Do you think that also means that Indians will be quite happy, not just with firm, decisive leadership I get, but do you think that means that, in your view, many Indians will also be happy with a dose of authoritarianism? I mean, even in the past when it's happened on occasion, emergency. In the early days, people liked it. People didn't mind it.
Interject for a minute.
Yeah,
that's generally the view of the lower middle class, and it generally is that the answer is like dictator is the answer. But the people will not.
Would you go that far?
I can't.
Do you think people might like a dose of authoritarianism?
I cannot speak. I mean, I'm a foreigner. There's no way I'm speaking for India, but I do think that there has been this growing sense, particularly I think in this sort of crowd in the urban middle class, that India is falling behind, and one reason may be this kind of very argumentative form of decision making that sometimes doesn't lead to decisions being made.
Indians are argumentative. It's part of our DNA.
They voted against wonderful.
It's our birthright.
No line between authoritarianism and dictatorship. What they've been talking about is dictatorship. Modi is not a dictator.
He's authoritarian.
Which is a big difference. Please understand the two English words.
Sorry, what is he? Is he decisive?
Within the
Is he authoritarian?
Yes.
Or is he a dictator?
He's not a dictator. He is not a dictator.
But you're saying he is authoritarian.
Authoritarian and decisive, and that's what India needs.
Devang, would you agree he's authoritarian and decisive, or would you just leave it at decisive? Decisive is fine. Is he authoritarian also?
Well, that's what I said. Vikram, the authoritarian is a word which has to be qualified. It can't be just used in the abstract. Authoritarian, as I have stated, within the constitutional framework, within the framework of the organization that you are leading.
Okay. Devang, we got it. Okay. I'm taking a break right now. Coming back to the audience, and then final comments from everybody when we return. I'm coming back to the audience. Let's see what they think of this. Whether they want a firm, decisive leader, perhaps authoritarian and dictatorial. That's when you start having problems.
Not a dictator.
We'll ask the audience when we come back.